Innovation Hub for the opportunity to bring this panel together. And just as a point of personal privilege, I've had a chance to be part of the UGIH family since it was launched in COP26. And it's been an amazing journey to, at the highest levels, see a multi-stakeholder engagement process to come together and see the ways in which we can start to really unlock economic development, climate impacts, sustainability in cities, communities, and countries, especially in the global south and low and middle income countries, which is something we're going to be talking about today. So thank you so much for letting me be part of that journey with the Innovation Hub. I'm from the Stanford Codex Center for Legal Informatics, from the Climate Data Policy Initiative. So you can see I'm a data nerd, and I'm excited to be with this amazing panel to talk about something that we haven't often talked about at COP with the kind of focus, and we should, which is how do we ensure that the work that we are all doing to create a more sustainable world translates into wins and developments of economies in low and middle income countries. And as we know, those economies are primarily made up of small and medium-sized enterprises. And yet much of our conversation is about the largest corporations. Now, this is a both and conversation. I'm a big proponent of the enabling environment and the importance of accountability for large corporations. The question then is how do we translate that forcing function into something that is much more deep and systemic and fortifying for local economies? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm excited to have this amazing panel here with me. And I will just introduce them very quickly, and then we're going to have one of our panelists give an opening mini keynote address. So first, from the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub, Nitin Arora, the Program Management Officer for the Hub. Thank you for being here. I know that these days are long. Then we have Wendy Miles, who's a barrister at 20 Essex and Vice Chair for the International Chamber of Commerce, Environment and Energy Commission. So important to have the voice of an international grouping of business-focused entities. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Andromeda Wood, VP for Regulatory Strategy at Workiva, bringing in the perspective of the solution provider. And then Liv Watson, who is my partner in crime. I love working with her on these issues. She is the co-founder of the Global Digital Single Market Data Alliance. I'm one of the co-founders as well, so I'm really excited to have her bring that perspective and her deep knowledge about investor-grade data. Last but not least is Gry Langbach, who's the director of the COP Norwegian Business Delegation and Pavilion and Special Advisor Green Growth and Transformation for Innovation Norway. Very excited to have a representation of a leading global country that is really thinking deeply about how to be good stewards for the planet and how to build local economies across the world. So we're going to have her come up and just give a little bit of her thoughts given the work you're doing at Innovate Norway. Thank you.
So I think I will start with a small context of Norway. Norway is a very small country with just 5.6 billion people, but with big ambitions. 46% of our population has a higher education compared to European average at 33%. We are among the most digitized countries in Europe with strong broadband capacity, competence and digitalization in both government and businesses. Historically, Norway was a poor country until we discovered the oil. But even before that, we built companies like Hydro, Statkraft, Yara, and Elkem on hydropower with Swedish and French investors. What we excel at is pioneering and engineering, tailoring complex installations like offshore platforms and carbon capture systems. So, a few facts about the Norwegian business landscape. We have 124,000 small and mid-sized enterprises. That's 99% of all businesses in Norway. They employ 850,000 people making them the backbone of our economy. I'm representing Innovation Norway, which is Norwegian's government's official instrument for supporting innovation and development in business and industry. We are promoting sustainable growth and value creation through funding, both grants and loans, advisory services and competence, and international networks. Through one of our funding schemes that we have together with the Norwegian Research Council and also the other funding body, where we are focusing on accelerating the green transition through collaboration in value chains. We mobilized. Is there a presentation? Yeah, thank you. So, through one funding scheme, we focus on accelerating the green transition through collaboration in value chains. We mobilized 2.3 billion public Norwegian kroners, which was matched with the same amount of private capital. These represent our 32 national teams and large diversity in our portfolio, all within environmental technology. They represent 450 partners, R&D institutes, public sector, universities, and not at least 280 businesses, including 200 SMEs. So our role in the green transition. With the 32 projects, perhaps Norway's purpose is to be a sandbox for advanced, innovative solutions. If an innovation fails in Norway, few notice, but we learn at every step. The next step for many of these projects is international collaboration through EU-funded programs. The challenge for Norway, what Norway is not so good at, is scaling and international commercialization, making new solutions resilient and global. That's why we need passionate actors who want to develop and implement the technologies that will keep us below 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, or maybe today 2.3 degrees. And these companies need to be at COP to meet other passionate front runners who are struggling with the same international barriers with laws and regulations in standardization, immaterial properties, and finding the innovative customers prepared to be the first buyers. Because they understand that this is the future, this is risk reduction and the best choice in the long run.
Thank you.
Sorry, there's one more slide. I'm sorry. I also wanted to talk about one of the projects. Sorry. Yeah. I wanted to showcase one of the examples. This is a consortia with. This is one of the largest ones. It's 28 small, most of them small companies working together. In Norway, it's a problem. Approximately 250,000 Norwegian wooden houses are burned every year as energy recycling. These consortia want to reuse the wood in other applications, building barns, building beautiful installation, like reusing it in new buildings. And this has ended up in a lot of Master of Science diplomas, PhDs, new technology on how to match wooden pieces together, a lot of new innovations, lot of new IPR. So this is just one example. And a lot of people ask, how can you make such a consortia? Because they depend on each other and they're sharing a lot of immaterial properties. There's a lot of data and a lot of algorithms. Who's going to own that? Who's bringing the algorithms into the consortia? Who will own who's bringing data into the consortia, who will develop further on, who will have access to these data, who will maintain the data, and so on. So this is one of the major issues that we work on across all these consortia. But I would like to mention this one because it's the largest one with a small consortia. And this is very much because we are an open economy. There's a lot of trust in the Norwegian society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gry. Fantastic to hear about the work and the infrastructure you've already developed, and excited to hear how that can be leveraged to bring greater impact globally. So with that, I'm going to let Liv kick it off. I'm going to have sort of 3 rounds of questions, one around context, then what's needed and what's next, and then how do we work together to make the difference that we need to make. So how do you diagnose this data problem, Liv? You know, what's the most significant barriers preventing small and medium-sized enterprises from collecting and reporting the data that they need so that they can be not just, you know, giving data away, but actually being empowered to report, but also to get access to the green finance, carbon markets, the things that we must deliver for those SMEs.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Gry. We happen to be from Norway, both of us. Number one, it's a very good question, Catherine, but I want to set the stage. There's about 400 million SMEs around the world. And what is an SME really? It's 250 company or less, but most of them have 10 or fewer employees. But yet they produce a lot of the support to larger corporations, and these larger corporations are falling under regulatory regime, so that they got to support and part of procurement produce this data. Now, large corporations, they have a lot of support, they have a lot of resources, they can buy expensive tools and solutions, but SMEs don't. They really don't have neither the skill set or a way of producing this data to meet all of the different regulatory and driven by procurement of their supply chain. So with that, we have a problem that if we don't do and rethink how SMEs can produce data to be part of this green transition, and also to be able to seek new loans to be able to green their businesses, they're going to be left behind. So is this world ready to leave 400 million companies behind because they can't produce the data? So that's when I say that this time around, we got to start thinking about this concept of create once and produce in many ways. So what do I mean by that? Take the utility bill, for example. Why do we have to rekey that information or even go out and buy it from data vendors when that data sits within systems? So I'm not going to go into that detail on how until you ask the question, what can be done? But I want to emphasize the cost to companies to be able to produce this data. When you look at the big company, banks alone spend 890 billion around the world just to be in compliance with data requests from the banks. So we got a problem. Now we got to fix it. So Catherine, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Liv. That's a great level set for us. I'd now like Nitin to, from your perspective, and having the Innovation Hub up on stage, you've seen a lot in the years that you've been working with the UNFCCC. Not many, because you look so young, but in the time you've been with the UNFCCC and the time with the Innovation Hub, you know, how have you seen this conversation evolve? Do you think there's a greater recognition of the need to support small and medium-sized enterprises? Thoughts that you have about bright spots and challenges that we face?
Let me start by thanking you for complimenting me for that, but I don't look old, but I've been working with the Secretariat for 18 years, just to let you know. Thank you, Catherine, for having me here in this panel. And I'm really happy that we are able to provide this platform to organize this important discussion today. I heard from the co-panelists about the SMEs, actually large number of SMEs, and the data struggle that they face actually. despite of the fact that they are the backbones of innovation. I mean, like most innovations, if you see, come from startups and small and medium enterprises. And I mean, like data is first thing, but there are many other challenges that they face, including access to finance, access to new technologies, and access to innovative business models. And this is exactly what we are trying to do at Global Innovation Hub, which was an initiative of the Secretariat that we launched at COP26 in Glasgow, with twofold objective. A, to promote to promote development of new solution innovation in development of new solutions, as well as promoting the deployment of existing solutions at scale. Because often we overlook that aspect, that there are solutions that already exist, but due to all the challenges that these small and medium enterprises innovators face, we don't see deployment of these solutions at scale. In order to achieve these two objectives, we work in different spaces. Our COP dialogue, which this session is part of, is one such platform. Whereas we have 3 other platforms. We recently, actually just before this session, launched our other working space, the digital platform, which will be a repository of climate-related challenges and solutions. It's an AI-driven platform which will have challenges not just from solution seekers. We say solution seekers are mostly cities, subnationals, national governments who are looking for raising their climate action ambitions. But I know the solution providers, which are generally innovators, they are also sometimes the ones who are facing challenges as we talk about, and we need to find out solutions for them as well, how they can find those solutions. So this solution platform is going to act as a space where both government entities as well as innovators can search for solutions. And then we have our systemic innovation workshops. That's another platform that we use, wherein we try to bring in innovators, including small and medium enterprises, to talk about the innovations that they are doing so that they can be brought to the global stages, such as COP. And also we work on ideating innovation projects, concrete ideas that can be supported through our network, which then results in concrete innovative products and solutions. So this is how we are working at Innovation Hub to provide platform to these innovators, including SMEs. I know that one such platform is not enough. So our objective eventually is to make Innovation Hub, UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub, a network of networks. So we need to create thousands, millions of such platforms that can then be connected to each other. And so, for example, just to give you an example, if a small and medium enterprise innovator in Uzbekistan is looking for a solution, they should go and this guy should be able to connect through our network, be a part of this global family, and can look for a solution that is existing maybe in Norway, for example. So these are some of the efforts that we are trying to put in. I know national governments are also doing their bits actually to provide realizing the potential in SMEs, trying to do their bits to promote innovation by creating innovation parks and other stuff. But we need to do more, I think. So I'll stop here and then.
No, thank you. And congratulations on the Solutions Hub launch. And Gri, I think it's exciting to see this AI-powered matchmaking, and I think that's really going to be an important part of once these small and medium-sized enterprises are able to be empowered with their own data, then the question is, how do they actually take steps to make the changes that they need to make? And so Nitin, the hub is going to do a lot on that. So thank you for that. And then in terms of, I've got 2 other folks. This is a heavy duty thought here and some leading thinkers. So I'm really excited to have Wendy from the International Chamber of Commerce tell us what you're seeing. I mean, you represent businesses and those associations across the world. What's the conversation like? What are you, what are we getting it right? What's happening and where do we need to go next?
Okay, so it's my perspective. So I don't speak for the whole ICC, all 45 million companies. But the perspective I see, including in particular through the work with the ICC Environment and Energy Commission, is 3 points. First of all, the support for SMEs, given that we all acknowledge they're the backbone of the economy, every economy, emerging markets, developed markets, the whole shebang. They are woefully under-supported in relation to climate investment, mitigation, adaptation, resilience building across the board. So that's the first point. The second point, I go from bad to good because I can't let you leave on a sad note. The second point is it's exponentially better today than what it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. We're leaning into the problem and I think really addressing it. But the third point, which is where I think business and industry really has an extraordinary opportunity. Trade and commerce and cross-border trade and commerce has worked for hundreds of years, centuries longer than respectfully the UNFCCC. So when I see the challenges in reaching agreement between developed countries and developing countries and the needs of private sector in developed countries and the mobilization of green finance and the competition, who gives the money and who gets the money. Global commerce doesn't look at it that way. The money goes where the demand and the supply is. And that's where I think this particular sort of topic, which deals with 3 very, very big points, green finance, carbon markets, and access to data, really brings together the opportunity that private sector can fill that perhaps goes beyond what a multinational negotiation process or even implementation process is able to fulfill, but not alone. It needs to be in public-private partnership, and we'll come to that in the second point. But I just want to can I give one example of where I see that? Is that okay? So the place this really came home to me was actually in a conversation this morning about the carbon markets and the voluntary carbon markets in particular. And there's a new coalition that was recently launched with Kenya, the UK and Singapore, with Panama and France also as founding partners. And it's called the Global Coalition on Carbon Markets. And it's this beautiful sort of high ambition thing outside of COP. And that coalition is working really, really hard on the demand side and the supply side of carbon markets. So for Kenya, the the government envoy person from Kenya said this morning that we don't really have demand side for carbon markets. We don't need to make claims. That's not where we're at in our differentiated responsibility sort of just transition process. And we don't have to mitigate. She didn't say that, but they don't have to mitigate as much as the rest of us do in the global north. So what she's saying is our opportunity is to supply. We can create the projects to fulfill your carbon needs and generate for us the climate finance. Now, how do they do that? They do that by creating offtake demand. How do you create offtake demand? By putting disclosure rules and reporting rules, right? The penny drops, and that creates that offtake demand. So the big multinationals who are reporting their scope 1, scope 2, and yes, scope 3, which may go circular all the way back to those same supply chain companies in those emerging markets, but the multinationals are doing it for them and then generating that finance to go back again. And the circularity of that, just markets working well with a bit of help from a regulatory framework, it's like magic.
Okay, well, you said before we started the panel, this is a very complicated topic, but I think you just kind of nailed it. I was like, okay. Thank you so much for that. Andy, although her name is Andromeda, and I think that's such a Andromeda Wood from Workiva. So you're over there as a solution provider, and you're sitting with these companies, the large ones for the most part. You know what's happening behind closed doors. How are they thinking about their engagement with their value chain, which are, you know, small and medium-sized enterprises? What's happening there, and what do they need?
Well, I mean, we've already had a really good introduction to my section, so thank you very much for that, with the introduction of that concept of the circularity with the scope 3 and the large companies and, of course, all the SMEs. Because obviously what's going on is that the large enterprises, we're all very familiar with the fact that they are under requirements, pressure, stakeholder demand to provide information about their climate impacts across the board. And obviously that has to include their value chains and their supply chains, which is where all of these SMEs sit. And policy has always been very clear as well. We want this data. It's not possible to leave it out. Leaving out the data from across the value chains doesn't give that complete picture of the impacts, and it doesn't allow that to be assessed and to be used properly. So obviously, we serve a very large number actually of large enterprise companies. We have over 4,600 customers, and that includes many of the largest companies in the world. And the challenge that they face is a lot of them rely quite heavily at the moment on estimates. And there is a lot of pressure because of the regulatory environment, because of the need for this data to be more accurate for assessment of impacts and for assessment of activities and for justification, should we say, and validation of goals and so on, to do something more than estimates, which means a lot of them are looking to be able to collect something better from the SMEs and the companies in their value chain. Now, I heard an absolutely fantastic term at a conference the other day, which I'm about to get onto. Collecting that data means that some of the larger companies are trying to sort of get into solving that tool problem themselves. They realize that, you know, they can afford to some extent the cost of technology, of platforms and of tools to help them work with the data and to help them collect the data. So there is a set of the larger enterprise companies that are creating portals. They're creating forms for companies to fill in. They're asking for data directly to try and improve their estimates. And the term that I heard, it was, I think, last year or so at a conference, was portal fatigue. Was that in the efforts at the moment to try and help the smaller and medium enterprises report and to get that actual accurate data up into the value chain and up into the enterprises via that procurement process, has led to a proliferation of these portals and forms because there hasn't been the standardization available of what data should be collected from SMEs. And of course, all of the enterprises know this. They all would like there to be more standardization on their data for their end as well as for the SME end. So the big problem that we have, actually a lot of the complexity of the situation isn't just sitting in the fact that some of this data is hard to collect for companies, especially for smaller companies who can't dedicate resources to it, but in the fact that they're not being asked for the same thing from every single enterprise organization. They're not being asked for things that are being defined in the same way, for metrics that are all being defined in the same way. And I hope we'll get onto how that is improving and also not improving a bit in some of the later questions. But it's a really complicated situation.
Thank you so much. Another great insight. Looking forward to hearing more about like what we do next on the solution side. But before we do that, I think we almost have everybody, if we put everybody in a room and 100 more people like us, I think we could make a lot of progress because this is all of the right people. Except for we haven't heard from Kadir Gungar yet, who's the chair of Sustainable Impact Capital and Holding. And so you're sitting on the investor side, and you're also working globally, but in the MENA region as well. So you have a particular understanding of what's happening in those local economies. Is all the work that we're doing actually supporting their success in this future green economy? Would love to just hear your thoughts about that and what you think is happening in the investor world.
Thank you for inviting me and Nitin for the gender balance in the panel. We will definitely give females more time to talk, and then. So I'm sorry for my voice. Well, I'm based in Dubai. Dubai hosted COP28, and what I'm proud to see, UAE is very much on, like, at least I can definitely talk from the UAE perspective since I'm based there for a while. UAE is definitely on track in supporting investors like me and creating funds, supporting the space, and also putting the right legislations to keep things on track. So from that perspective, I think MENA is really welcome with it. And then I was at the FII summit in Riyadh 2 weeks ago. And then Ministry of Energy talked mainly about the economy that this sustainability will shape. So I can also see that like in the MENA region, like Saudi Arabia is also looking to catch the mandates, and I can see, you know, like MENA is like I know how the renewables goes on in the North Africa, and then I definitely see a lot of commitment and action in the MENA region from my perspective.
Thank you, Kadir. And I mean, you're there helping to build those economies. We appreciate that. We need investors who understand the importance of digging deep into these economies and giving opportunities. So thank you for all that you're doing. So, okay, we have quite a context that we've set. We have everybody knows we need to do something different. We feel some good momentum. So let's talk about what's needed and what's next. So all panelists, or at least a majority. Okay, what steps do we have to take to ensure that we're building that infrastructure so that we can get the tools to these SMEs? I mean, we heard Andy and others talking about, you know, just this portal fatigue and, you know, killing with kindness, I guess, is what we're doing now. And so what's it going to take for us to create a more rational system? And, you know, maybe, Liv, you could start talking about what you see the major planks of investor grade data system would be.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little context. So when I started college, my professor wanted me to copy and paste and copy and paste. So I basically realized the internet was coming. Now I'm aging myself, I know. But I realized back then that we need data standard that makes data machine readable. So think about this. You have a can of water here. It has a barcode. Everybody at the checkout point, they barcode that in. What if we had barcode for financial and business and sustainability data? So we founded the foundation, and today in over 60 countries, companies must also produce their data in machine readable data to make data more discoverable and reusable to the marketplace. And that's pretty much in place now, and that we should continue supporting, because there is this perception out there that AI is going to fix everything. And I'm going to be very skeptical about that. Until we have good data, AI isn't going to give us any good solutions. So the quality of the data becomes very important. Now, building on what Andy talked about, is that it isn't just a regulation. And as you also said, it is the auditor and the assurance has to be able to verify that data, be able to track that data to make investor grade data. Investor grade data is assurable and audited, right? So what do we need to do? Well, if the SMEs can't get that data, why don't we think a different way, which I left off on my last discussion was we need to be able to create data one time and repurpose it. So if government already has that data, and if the utility company and the water department, why can't we design an open way and a data standard? We know we can do it. There is a will in the marketplace because both you and I have been involved with XBRL for a long time. We know that data is key. So what we need is a data standard, the utility companies and a trust framework and the water company to allow the companies to self-select. So it's not like the water company is going to give all your data out. And then on top of that, you have a platform to align that with the EU taxonomy, which is also important to Norway, etc. So the data existing, why do we that data when the data already exists? So we're on a mission to make that happen. And that's when Catherine said that we are partners in crime. Yeah, the crime is just to make data.
I'd love to, get a couple more of you to respond to that. And maybe Gry and Andy, I think it would be great to hear from you about what in Norway, how are you thinking about this? When Liv says this data, should be available and we shouldn't be creating portal fatigue. What do you see happening in Norway right now?
I think we're pretty good on digitalization in Norway, and we have this openness. And I think also that the large Norwegian actors, because of our solid background, we want to be transparent because we know we are in some energy dilemma, and we also have a lot of focus on the dilemma with climate versus nature. And all of these, to solving these dilemmas, we need openness, we need digitalization, and I think everyone wants to are really hoping to soon get a specification where they know that it's possible to compare the climate footprint and the nature footprint for each one of the purchasing you want to do. So I think again, maybe Norway can be one of the front runners just because we have this openness and we have the access to data. And again, yes, we need all the data. We are also very good at collecting data. We're collecting data from far below the sea level, from up in the sky, and we're sending rockets up. So we know how to collect data. And when we have all these good information points, then it's also possible to use artificial intelligence to do something good out of all the data.
Fantastic. And actually, I'm going to get to you, Andy, but I just wanted Wendy for you to chime in, thinking about the chamber. What are you thinking? Where are we with the data supports and infrastructure right now? You hear Gry talking about that. Some countries have access and are really tracking a lot of data. Others are not. What's it going to take to create that support and the foundation for this?
Yeah, it's mixed. It was on my app, but it just came off. So I'll try and remember. Yeah. The ICC has incredible reach. It's in 170 countries across these 45 million companies, and a lot of them are SMEs. So it's actually really, I think, stood up in the last year or so in trying to be there for those SMEs to support them. And it's not just portal fatigue. The cost is prohibitive. And when the cost of compliance is pushed down the supply chain, it puts SMEs out of business, and particularly in land use and agriculture with family farms and things. So the ICC's got a few things. I'll give a quick preview because I don't want to spoil the launch on Friday of the SME Climate Finance Stocktake, which was a joint initiative between the ICC, SAGE, and Negar Apadari, who still is the high-level champion from Azerbaijan. And they really looked into this question. And I won't spoil the report, but just to make 2 points. First of all, SMEs are really, really paying attention to this now in a way that wasn't the case when they were surveyed earlier. And so attention on energy efficiency reporting, waste reduction reporting. So exactly the utility data that you're talking about. And struggling still with how to find the data. And one of this report makes 5 recommendations, and I won't go through the 5 recommendations, but they are very, very valuable. And the most important thing that comes through it is standardization. And I think the most important thing to remember is that standardization and cross-border sort of commerce can come in 2 ways. It can either come from public economic intervention, so state intervention, regulation, or quasi, so standard setters, for example, who are neither public nor private really, or both. But it can also come through private standardization, through contracts, through standardization of contracts, so standardization through the supply chain. And that's where the ICC has created this ICC SME entrepreneur portal, which has all of these tools, including one-click tool, and they don't invent.
That's a good portal, not the other kind.
No, that's a good portal. This isn't portal. Well, it's one click, so it's not meant to give portal fatigue. It's just the one. But what is really impressive, I think, about their entrepreneurship program is it's not driven from Paris, where the headquarters is. They've created these hubs all around the world, and it's actually the SMEs and the local chambers of commerce in different countries, in different regions around the world, combination of from least developed countries to the most developed and emerging markets, all in between. And there, what will work for us in our market, rather than having that driven down. And, if you're in any of the negotiating rooms, the mantra that you're not going to stop hearing is the Paris Agreement is bottom up, not top down. And so I think that's really, really powerful. It's in the language, it's in the context, it's great.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm looking at the recommendations, but I'm not going to tell the audience. You'll have to go to their event. Andy, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think the bottom up and the access to the data are the really important points that tie into that enterprise picture. And we've mentioned standardization repeatedly. And there is definitely some effort, shall we say, from that top-down standardization to try and limit what data is required from SMEs for the regulatory requirements at the top. And we saw a very strong pushback on that. And we also see digitization ideally being tied into that as well, so that data is then available. But this is very much at a kind of I think we have 2 layers here. We've got the raw data for the water use, the energy use. We've got lots of raw data for nature impact. We have enterprises with very high level target setting data with disclosures that are at aggregate level across massive corporations and a consolidated data. And somewhere in the middle, we have a lot of SMEs who need their own little aggregation of data, of that raw water data and so on, for their own purposes, not just for the cost center of reporting, but because for everybody, there are the efficiencies in there. I mean, circular economy is all about efficiency. Reducing energy use in general is an efficiency measure. And I think one of the key pieces to sort of fixing this picture isn't just, so from the enterprise perspective, which is the one that I bring, there's this kind of ideal world where somewhere in the middle, the tools are available, and we're starting to see sort of tools for SMEs being promoted a bit more, being provided by governments, being provided by innovation platforms, that mean that ideally, I think the raw data doesn't just go straight from the bottom to the top, cutting out the SMEs. It also goes to the SMEs in a usable way for their own purposes. That's not just reporting. Because if the standardization should help, and contract standardization is so important in procurement. I actually have a friend who works a bit in contract language, and some of the work looks amazing and fascinating. But the standardization from the top and from the bottom, and meeting in the middle to provide the actual tools, I think is going to be so key. Because there's a kind of a danger of going, we've got the raw data, we've got the enterprises, and not standardizing for the layer in the middle.
Right. super interesting insight. And I want to, Nitin, I wanted you to talk about, so when we work with Nitin and the team for this innovation hub, we think this is their only job. And then we find out that they're like in charge of massive other things of importance. And I think that's, we have to recognize the UNFCCC covers a lot of ground. So Nitin does, I won't get the title right, but you're doing the main partnership work for implementation of Article 6.4. And this is a really important piece of green finance, which is how do we ensure that SMEs have an opportunity to take action based on good data and then be remunerated for the decarbonization or other sustainability benefits that they achieve? What are you seeing happening? What do you think about the promise of Article 6.4? And also, there is tension around how high the bar should be on the standards. So we're saying here we need investor grade data, we need standards so that we can actually unlock green finance. But what are you seeing happening right now? Do we have it right?
Well, I think carbon markets, they're not a new concept. We saw under Kyoto the potential that CDM unleashed, actually, especially for SMEs, when it allowed actually small organizations to launch projects and access finance that came out as a result of being part of the carbon market. So we have already seen that in the past. Coming to Paris Agreement and Article 6.4, of course, it has a potential to unlock that capital, actually, specifically for small organizations who are working in the innovation space for developing climate and sustainability solutions, which eventually will reduce emissions and then eligible for getting credits. So it has potential, of course. There's a lot of development already happening. It's only actually a few weeks ago when supervisory body of 6.4 approved the first methodology. I'm sure you are aware about that in the landfill space. So, which was a starting point. It's always been the case that, when you start a new mechanism, it takes some time, which happened in the case of 6.4 also. That took some time to come up with the first methodology, but we are extremely sorry. It's just the business. That's the sad part of being in the secretariat, and people like in the panel as well. Yes, of course, you talked about having high bars in terms of integrity. And yesterday we had our first side event. You were there, Catherine, and you saw Martin Hashen, chairman of Article 6 supervisory body. His focus was dedicated on actually making sure that the standards that come up under Article 6.4 are of highest integrity, which is extremely important. To make sure that 6.4 has credibility in the market. Of course, there's competition from voluntary standards also, which some countries are eyeing for as part of the 6.2. But I'm 100% sure that 6.4 will emerge as a benchmark, relying on credibility of United Nations. And raise standards high, actually, in the carbon markets. So that's my take on it.
I mean, it's great to hear. I think what we're seeing is that, in these different elements of the green transition, we're all moving towards what are the standards that are required for data so that we can create markets that people can depend on so we can scale them. So I think that's great news. I also want to say we want a methodology. Here's my wish list. We want your next methodology to be on energy retrofits, something that SMEs could easily do. Because I think the whole point of good data is not just because we want people to have good data, it's so that we can get green finance and get them part of new markets. And so I think to the extent that we can show quickly that taking action makes a difference for SMEs, I mean, that's key. So Kadir, I'm going to come to you. So you're an investor and people are coming to you all the time and they're asking you, for money, for good things. When you look at, whether it's you or a colleague in an emerging sector like energy or something for which there's things that we know work, how do you all think about impact? Who are you relying on? You relying on the standard setters? Are you relying on the UNFCCC? I mean, who are you looking at to know, oh, that's a risk I'm able to take?
Well, first of all, I really believe in what I'm doing, and then I am committed for long term. So my metrics are long-term returns. Like coming from that, unfortunately, like currently, like from the financial markets perspective, only certainty is uncertainty. And therefore, people in the space and who wants to keep up in the space, also who wants to achieve the results, should look all these calendars as a long term, and that's what I'm doing. And like when I look from the long term perspective, I'm not getting affected from the short term problems. And like when I look at my portfolio companies, like at a period, like a longer period, they give more accurate returns. So I think like people in our space, one of the key metrics is looking at the return schedule as a long term. And like these days, like during COP or past few weeks with the other financial gatherings, I can see like-minded people and people who have a long-term agenda, who are still like very committed to the space. So I think my key message is being there for the long term, and whatever technology today we looking at, like or the companies who able to stand, like they spend 10-20 years in the market. It's so we should not look for this administration, that administration. Like we just have to be stand and be constant on what we're trying to do. So and then result will come sooner or later. It's all about being able to survive and stand on the right message. Yeah.
Thank you, Kadir. And if we could have all investors with that similar mindset, we would be in a better place. So thank you so much for that. We are getting to the end of our hour. But what I'd like to do is there's a couple like sort of popcorn questions that one person can answer just so we've got them done. One is quickly role of government. Can somebody say like this is what a government that's concerned about protecting their domestic industries, like what would they do if they were to put in place some regulations to help SMEs? Like are there a set of new policies? Nagri, you've talked about in Norway, you already have so much of this infrastructure, so you think it's just maybe already happened. But for other countries, what would you say their first steps should be to develop the kind of data infrastructure and digital infrastructure that's required for this?
The first thing that comes to mind is, I know you also talk about Norway is a very small country with a small population. So we are in lack of talents. We need more competence, we need more heads and hands. And that's our And I guess will probably also be the case in other countries, because everything is evolving so rapidly. So the only thing that is, we know that things are going rapid now today, and we also know that it will never go so slow as now. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, Wendy.
This ICC Sage High Level Champions report does call out in a positive way policy making an impact, and cites the European Commission's new VSME reporting framework, which creates the foundations for a short, consistent data pack, which SMEs can share with lenders and large buyers. So kind of like when you're buying a house, right? And you have a set piece data pack to get your mortgage. So governments can impose that and give you that standardization within a single national market, and coalitions of governments can share those across one another. So there's plenty governments can do. And on the recipient end, if you're a net exporter of carbon credits, for example, and a net importer of climate finance, international finance, again, your government can enter into bilateral agreements, kind of like the Article 6.2, if you like, but not that specific, just general trade agreements to say we will put a regulatory package in place that will match, so we can have this exchange of information. So there's a lot that governments can do in bilateral process to shift this along without having to have 195 countries all agree.
Fantastic. That's great to think about, governments thinking about workforce development in new ways. So, okay, last round for everybody. We're going to go down the list here, and we'll start with Liv, and you can take your choice. You can either tell us 5 years from now, COP30, we've got all these new NDCs. What's your wish for the progress that we will have made for small and medium-sized enterprises in these economies? And she's going to take that one. There you go.
I will answer that question very clearly to say that I want data to flow like water that I turn on in the shower every day. But do you know how many years it took to standardize water to flow? 100 years. We don't have 100 years. We have to do this while we're still young. So 5 years from now, I hope that because this is not a technical problem, this is a human agreement problem, that we are smart enough to agree to allow for standardization so that we can turn on the tap and the water comes.
Very nice. Okay, Nitin. I was going to say you get either headline 5 years from now, or something that you've learned from somebody here that you hadn't really thought about and that you're thinking about more as a result of this panel.
Well, I 5 years from now, it's the difficult one. Just to give my reflection on that. But I guess, I think we need to, I just want to say that the governments have to create a regulatory environment in such a way that climate finance can flow from national, just not in the national schemes, but to the individual level. So come on with we need to have those regulatory environments in countries wherein these flows, this international finance can flow into individual projects, because then only private finance can be leveraged actually to unleash the true potential of investing in such projects and programs. That's I wish for. I hope that's something we'll see in coming years coming out of the process.
Thank you, Nitin. That's great. Andy.
I think I'm going to borrow Liv's water actually and say I think ideally in 5 years we've got to the point where the data isn't just flowing like water, but it's clean, usable water. So I kind of think that there should be this world where what we've got is data that via the use of technology, via the use of that people power, via the use of policy and governments is good for finance markets, for operations. It can be used by companies of any size, and it's not difficult. It doesn't require overly complicated, expensive technology, but the technology is there. And that the reporting is actually kind of a nice automated byproduct of that, because the reporting reflects what needs to be used.
Thank you. Gry, thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. Information in itself, the value is what you do with the information. So I hope that we have all this information. I like the shower picture, or maybe more the streamlined flow. And we need to get the most value out of it. So we need sectors to collaborate. We need collaboration across countries. We need to work together, private sector, public sector, civil society. All of us need to collaborate. And that's the value that we can create from this data. And of course, put artificial intelligence on all this beautiful real-time data that will be collected from above the ground, from up the ground, and everywhere. So yeah,
Love
in 5
that.
years.
Okay.
I think 5 years is a long time. 3
5
years.
years is a long
Yeah,
time.
that's
Okay,
it.
3 years, guys. We're still young, exactly. Kadir, why don't you, what do you think 5 years from now? What are you hoping we're talking about here when we think about the role of small and medium-sized enterprise in these countries that really matter outside of this venue?
I think while the countries and the companies are implementing the AI in the country level and or in the company level, we have to think how can we use the human potential that outcome from this transition, you know, and how we can actually untap human potential by, you know, concentrating more on human development to bring us more opportunities, just like AI. And then, you know, the supporting SMEs is one key way of enabling, you know, like in those countries, like in underprivileged, you know, the societies, to bring their you know, the financial bring their financial outcome, you know, and then bringing their other infrastructure needs. You know, I think implementing these technologies also, you know, brings new potentials, but only if we can get aware of it, you know, like, so I think like one thing to highlight for me is like, while putting all these technologies in place, like we should not give up from empowering human beings. Yeah, this is my
Technology for unlocking human potential. Okay. You're our last headline.
Is the key to unlocking this Gordian knot for SMEs and for everybody. Data collection, data storage, long-term data storage, data analytics, and AI. All of that, we know, uses enormous amounts of energy. And we're meant to be reducing our energy uses and making our energy more efficient. So what I would like to see, and this is me, my personal capacity, what I would like to see in 5 years' time is a standardized law adopted by states that any data centers must be powered by renewable energy.
Okay. Yes, let's do that. I'm in California, so I know that, yeah. That's a tall order. I think we might get the SMEs first. Let me just say thank you so much. And I do feel like out of this, I really feel like the SME is, and thinking about that part of the economy is a way to think about all of the work we're trying to do and centering it with the people for whom this impact has to occur. So I really appreciate this incredible group of people, and I am excited to see the continued collaboration that will come out of this. So thank you very much, and thank you to the Innovation Hub. Have a good evening.